here. I'm John Reid, and we're glad you're with us here on News Radio WRVA. We've talked a couple of times over the last several weeks about it's really kind of heating up and not very nice, an ugly race between the former delegate, now new state senator, John McGuire, who is challenging the incumbent Republican congressman, Bob Good, for the Republican nomination. And that decision for voters in the 5th Congressional District is going to be made pretty soon here. And I don't know if you're tracking on Facebook, but it's almost every day there's some zinger that's going back and forth between these two campaigns. And we had Congressman Good on last week, and I'm hopeful that Senator McGuire will join us here at some point. But this morning, Delegate Eric Zehr is with us, and I wanted to chat with you, Delegate Zehr, about what is this allegation that Senator McGuire is doing that's got some people concerned? And good morning to you.
Well, good morning to you, John. Thank you for having me on. You were just talking about elections having consequences, and you were talking about the potential that we won't be able to buy the car that we want here in just, 8 or 9 years. But it goes deeper than that. Even with the energy crisis that we're in, it's not just about buying cars, but it's about the fact that Virginia's importing electricity right now, and it is idiotic what we're doing. So elections have consequences. People need to understand what the backstory is, and that's why I wanted to be on the air this morning and talk about the backstory here with some of these endorsements in Campbell County that are being used against Congressman Bob Good. So if you look at a list of endorsements, you're not from Campbell County, you just see a list of names, and you can go along with this narrative that, well, here's a list of names. Obviously, the congressman is supporting his own county as eroding, and nothing could be further from the truth when you understand what's behind the names that are on that endorsement list. There is no currently elected Republican in Campbell who has endorsed against Congressman Bob Good. Of the 3 who have endorsed against the congressman, 2 have a very distinct bad history with the Republican committee in the county. One of them actually ran against me personally when I was the Republican nominee. Had his name on the Democrat sample ballot along with Northam and Herring in 2017. In 21, his name was on the sample ballot along with Terry McAuliffe and Mark Herring. This is one of those one of these guys who's endorsing McGuire. So a lot of history behind this. Not a great name if you're running as a Republican, especially if you're trying to pull yourself off as a conservative Republican. So that's one. I can tell you about another one of these guys. He was actually given a vote of no confidence because very shortly after being elected, he went along with the Democrats to get a $1.6 million tax increase snuck by the voters. And he did this by bringing it up in the Matters from the Board section at the end of a board meeting. No notice. Nobody had a clue it was coming. And they were able to get that referendum on in April. Nobody was paying attention. No voter realized they needed to be out voting. $1.6 million tax increase. 10% of the voters participated in that, and for that guy was given no vote of no confidence.
Well, let me ask you this: why? And I'll just take it to you personally. I assume you've endorsed Congressman Bob Good for the Republican nomination to return to Congress. What is it that made you make that choice over John McGuire? You know both of these guys pretty well, or?
So I know Bob very well. In fact, I worked with Bob when he first ran for the Board of Supervisors, and he spent a lot of time screening him, getting to know his family, his history, his children, his wife. And then I worked for 2 years on the Board of Supervisors with Bob. So I got to see him in action. Brilliant man of conviction, does not waver on his principles, on his values. He's the sort of guy is refreshing because he says I'm going to stand for X, Y, and Z. And guess what? He fights for X, Y, and Z. And so that's why he's got my endorsement.